Now, a lot to happen in Africa in 2019, and while we know it was just yesterday, a lot happened that might be easily forgotten, but their impacts will be felt for many years to come, from military coups in Sudan to violent protests and devastating cyclones in southern Africa. We take a look back at major events in 2019.
Our 2019 Africa Review begins in East Africa. In March, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed after taking off from Addis Ababa on its way to Nairobi, Kenya, killing all 157 people on board. The disaster was the second such crash of a Boeing 737 MAX 8 jet in less than 6 months and raised fears about the model's automated software, prompting the worldwide grounding of all similar planes currently in service. In the same month, southern Africa was hit by Cyclone Idai, which at the time was the most severe tropical storm to make landfall in Mozambique. More than 1,000 people were killed in 3 countries, Mozambique, Malawi and Zimbabwe. The United Nations described it as perhaps the worst natural disaster in the history of southern Africa. Idai was followed just a month later by Cyclone Kenneth, which, although caused fewer fatalities, was an even stronger storm. Relief efforts were largely left to international organizations and to local people themselves. Basic services in major cities such as Beira disappeared overnight and took months to restore, if at all. In October, at least 42 people were killed by a landslide in western Cameroon. The United Nations also released a report that same month saying that at least 29 people had died and another 14,000 displaced in Kenya due to floods and landslides from heavy rainfall. The battle to contain the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo continued in 2019, and although progress was made, the World Health Organization said violence and a lack of trust hampered efforts. Several attacks were targeted at health facilities and medical personnel. Some local people are suspicious of their motives and feel that they can trust neither their own government nor the international organizations.
We believe we have the resources on the ground from a public health operations point of view to end the Ebola outbreak. The difficulty we collectively face at the moment is just when we need that unlimited and unfettered access to communities. We've lost that access in key areas, and this is a very dangerous and alarming development in this response.
Since August 1st, 2018, there have been a total of 3,224 cases recorded, including 2,206 deaths, 1,087 survivors. 7 new cases were recorded in the week of November 18 to 24, 2019. To security, January 21st, people were killed in a terror attack at a hotel complex in Nairobi, Kenya. It lasted 19 hours. Among the victims was someone who had survived the 9/11 terror attacks in the United States. Somalia also saw its own share of attacks as militants continued to target the Somali state and African Union mission in Somalia forces. In the latest one, on December 28th, at least 79 people were killed by a car bomb explosion at a busy intersection on the outskirts of Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. This year, there also seemed to be an upsurge of the crisis in parts of the Sahel region. Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger suffered some of the worst attacks against their militaries, including a major assault in November that killed 71 soldiers in Niger. To politics. In April, Algeria's President Abdelaziz Bouteflika resigned after weeks of massive street protests. The 82-year-old, who had been in power for 20 years, had already dropped plans to seek a 5th term as opposition to his rule grew. In April, a similar case in Sudan after months of protests against bread price rises after government removed subsidies. The military toppled Omar al-Bashir, who had ruled for nearly 30 years. It was the 3rd time in Sudanese history that an unloved president had been overthrown in a popular revolution. But this time the generals tried to cling to power. They violently dispersed mass protests in Khartoum, outside the military headquarters. At least 87 people were killed, and there were more deaths outside the capital. And after more months of demonstrations on August 4th, the military and protesters signed a constitutional declaration which paved the way for the formation of a transitional government. A formal signing ceremony took place on August 17th. In the space of a single week in October, at least 67 people were killed during the widespread anti-government protests in Ethiopia. The violence came at an awkward time for Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. It was just weeks after he had been announced as winner of the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize.
There are those who have never seen war, but glorify and romanticize it. They have not seen the fear.
Critics said the award came too early. Progressive reforms by Abiy's administration and efforts in ending decades of hostility with Eritrea have won Abiy praise on the international stage. He is Africa's youngest leader. In South Africa, a spate of xenophobic violence on foreign-owned businesses drew international condemnation. Foreign nationals were blamed by protesting South Africans for high rates of unemployment and crime. Businesses were plundered, cars and businesses set alight. President Cyril Ramaphosa was criticized heavily for his response. Several people were arrested in connection to the attacks. In September, Zimbabwe bid farewell to former President Robert Mugabe, who died at the age of 95. He held office for over 3 decades before being deposed in a coup in 2017. He was declared a national hero by Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa.
Still ahead, African Affairs analyst Achike Chude joins us in the studio to review the major events in Africa in the year 2019 and what's ahead in 2020.